Imagine a man whose primary personality trait is looking at you with pure, unadulterated disdain. He snubs you at parties, insults your family, and views your social standing as a personal affront to his dignity. In the real world, this is a sign to block his number and move to a different zip code. But in the world of pop culture, this is a signal that you've just met your soulmate. For over 2 centuries, we've been fed a specific narrative that a man's coldness is just a shell for his hidden depth. We call it the Darcy effect. We've been taught that if we are just witty enough, patient enough, and different enough from other girls, the arrogant jerk will eventually stand in the pouring rain and confess that he loves us most ardently. But here's the spoiler. Jane Austen, the goat of social satire, accidentally hardwired a dangerous bug into our romantic software. She created a blueprint that teaches us to ignore red flags and hunt for gold inside people who treat us poorly. Today, we're deconstructing the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Fitzwilliam Darcy. And we're asking the uncomfortable question, did Jane Austen ruin our romantic lives? Hi, it's Captain Spoiler here, overthinking pop culture. We're about to dive deep into spoiler territory, so consider yourself warned. The problem isn't the book Pride and Prejudice itself, it's our collective memory of it. Austen wrote a biting satire about money and survival, but over time, we stripped away the social commentary and kept only the man as a project trope. As Rachel Feder argues in her book, The Darcy Myth, this shift ingrained a dangerous belief that a rude, dismissive man is just a prince in disguise, waiting for a woman to unlock him. It's a narrative thread that runs in a straight, toxic line, from the halls of Pemberley through the Cullens Forest and straight into Christian Grey's Red Room. In short, we've turned a cautionary tale about bad first impressions into a manual for toxic persistence. But to understand why we're so willing to ignore the warnings, we have to look at the man himself. Because Darcy isn't just a snob in a cravat, he's the refined version of something much darker.
I have fought against my better judgment, my family's expectation, the inferiority of your birth, my rank and circumstance, all these things, and I'm willing to put them aside and ask you to end my agony.
I don't understand.
I love you. Most ardently.
To understand why we're obsessed with Darcy, we have to look at his DNA. He isn't just a rich guy, he's a Byronic hero in a top hat. For those who missed it in lit class, the Byronic hero, named after the scandalous Lord Byron, was the original problematic fave. He's moody, mysterious, intellectually superior, and seemingly wounded by the world. He's the guy who thinks he's too deep for society, usually hiding a dark secret or a broken heart. Now here's where it gets interesting. Austen scholars often argue that Jane was actually playing a very clever game. She knew the Byronic fever was sweeping England, and she likely intended to satirize it. In her other novel, Northanger Abbey, she mocks the Gothic tropes of the time. And in Pride and Prejudice, Darcy is arguably a critique of this brooding masculinity. Austen wanted to show that being deep and moody is often just a fancy word for being a jerk. But she was too good at it. She gave him a massive estate and a vulnerability that backfired. Instead of laughing at the snob, the world fell for the mask. Think about the Meryton Ball. Darcy refuses to dance with Elizabeth because she's only tolerable. In a vacuum, he's just an elitist snob. But because we know he's the hero, we subconsciously interpret his rudeness as intriguing depth. We think, oh, he must be going through something. This created the bad boy with a secret heart of gold trope, the ultimate savior complex trigger. Pop culture has been huffing this supply for 2 centuries. This trope isn't just a literary relic, it's the engine that drives modern romance. We see its fingerprints everywhere. Take Edward Cullen, a literal predator whose desire to kill the protagonist is rebranded as a star-crossed struggle because he looks tortured while doing it. Or look at Simon Bassett in Bridgerton. He's the textbook reformed rake who uses his childhood trauma as a shield against commitment, making his emotional unavailability seem like a puzzle to be solved rather than a boundary to be respected. Even in teen dramas like Gossip Girl, we're told to excuse Chuck Bass's villainous behavior the second he shows a sliver of wounded vulnerability. And it only gets more extreme with characters like Hardin Scott from After, whose entire personality is built on the toxic premise, I'm only mean to you because I'm broken. It's the same recycled story over and over again. From the misunderstood genius in Good Will Hunting to the charming jerk in 10 Things I Hate About You, all the way to the brooding, dangerous anti-heroes of today's dark hits like Euphoria, we've been conditioned to believe that the more a man resists us, the more valuable his eventual surrender is. It turns romance into a siege, where the woman is the invading army trying to break down the walls of a cold, rich fortress. The message is clear. If he's mean, he's deep. If he's cold, he's hurt. And if you're special enough, you'll be the one to heal him.
I have faults enough, Miss Bennet, but I hope they are not of understanding. My temper I cannot vouch for. It might be called resentful. My good opinion once lost is lost forever.
Let's talk about the red flags. Because if we look at Darcy's behavior in the first half of the novel through a modern lens, it isn't a romance. It's a psychological horror show. It starts with the snub, where he insults Elizabeth's looks within earshot, dismissing her as not handsome enough to tempt him. It continues with the manipulation, where he actively sabotages his best friend Bingley's happiness, deciding on a whim that Jane's family is too unworthy for a legal connection. And then, of course, there's the proposal, which, let's be honest, is less of a confession of love and more of a list of grievances. He basically tells her, "I've tried to fight my better judgment. I hate your family. I'm ashamed to be seen with you, but I guess I'll marry you anyway." In any other context, that's not a proposal. It's a verbal assault on someone's self-esteem. In the Darcy myth, Rachel Fader points out that we are culturally trained to forgive all of this because of the letter. The moment Darcy explains his side of the story, we suddenly decide that his elitism was just shyness, and his interference in Bingley's life was protective honor. We let the explanation erase the behavior. We let his perspective become the only reality that matters. This has a devastating real-world ripple effect. It teaches us to prioritize a man's reasons over his actions. It conditions us to say, he isn't being a jerk, he's just guarded. Or, he didn't mean to ignore me, he's just traumatized/focused on his career/misunderstood. We start looking for excuses before we even look for respect. Austen accidentally taught us that a man's bad behavior is just a puzzle for us to solve. We become emotional detectives, searching for clues of hidden goodness in a crime scene of disrespect. And while Darcy eventually changes, pop culture has forgotten that most people in the real world don't. They just keep writing letters and giving explanations while the behavior stays exactly the same.
I have rules. If you follow them, I'll reward you. If you don't, I'll punish you.
As the centuries passed, the Darcy trope didn't just stay in the Regency era, it mutated. It started with what I call the soft Darcy revival, perfectly personified by Mark Darcy in Bridget Jones's Diary. Mark is the sanitized, modern version of the archetype. He's awkward, he's stiff, and he wears a questionable reindeer sweater, but he's fundamentally a good man. Pop culture used him to reinforce the idea that the guy who is mean to you at the buffet is actually the one who likes you just as you are. It's charming, it's relatable, and it's the gateway drug to the more dangerous versions of this myth. Because once we accepted that socially inept equals romantic, the slope got a lot steeper. We moved into the supernatural Darcy phase with Edward Cullen. Here, the Pemberley estate is replaced by immortality, and Darcy's social anxiety is rebranded as a literal thirst for blood. Suddenly, a guy watching you sleep without your consent isn't a stalker. He's just a tortured protector who is struggling with his feelings. We started to confuse a man's internal battle with his external disrespect. And that leads us to the final, most predatory evolution, Christian Grey. If you strip away the Red Room and the helicopters, Christian Grey is just Mr. Darcy on steroids. He has the same core traits, the Pemberley factor of untouchable wealth, the emotional stuntedness that we mistake for deep trauma, and a level of control that he justifies as being for your own protection. The problem is that because we've been raised on the Darcy myth, our internal alarm systems are broken. We don't see the surveillance or the isolation as control. We see it as dedication. We've been conditioned to think, if I can just be the one person he opens up to, I've won. We've turned the concept of winning a man into a substitute for a healthy relationship. We aren't looking for a partner who meets us halfway. We're looking for a trophy that we had to suffer to earn. We've been taught that the more it hurts to get him, the more he's worth once you have him. And that is a lie that keeps people trapped in toxic loops for years.
What would I get out of this?
Me.
This leads us to the most exhausting part of the Darcy legacy, the invisible, crushing weight of emotional labor. Think about the power dynamic in Pride and Prejudice. Elizabeth Bennet doesn't just get to exist, she has to perform. She has to be exceptionally witty, endlessly resilient, and intellectually superior just to get Darcy to realize he's being a jerk. She is the architect of his moral awakening. And while we celebrate Darcy's transformation, we rarely talk about the cost to Elizabeth. She spends months being emotionally drained, insulted, and stressed by his presence before he finally decides to be a decent human being. In the real world, this translates to the "I can fix him" industrial complex. We've been sold the lie that a woman's love is a magic wand that can turn a frog into a prince, or, more accurately, a toxic man into a stable partner. We stay in relationships with people who treat us like an afterthought or a secondary character in their own drama because we're waiting for that Pemberley moment. We tell ourselves that if we just hold on long enough, if we're just special enough, they'll have that sudden epiphany where they realize we're the only thing that matters. But here's the reality check that pop culture refuses to give you. People are not fixer-uppers. Your partner is not a period property that just needs a little sanding and a fresh coat of paint. In a 19th century novel, the character arc is guaranteed by the author. In real life, the arc usually just stays flat. When you stay with someone who treats you poorly, hoping for their reformation, you aren't a heroine. You're a volunteer for a job that doesn't pay. We have to stop romanticizing the effort it takes to make someone love us properly. If someone shows you they are cold, controlling, or indifferent in the first act, don't waste your second act waiting for a letter to explain away their cruelty, and definitely don't waste your third act trying to build a life on the ruins of someone else's personality. Your life isn't a Regency manuscript. You don't have to fix the hero to have a happy ending. So, did Jane Austen really ruin our romantic lives? Honestly, probably not. Austen was a genius who actually gave Elizabeth the agency to say no to a bad proposal. The real culprit is the way we've turned her story into a template for toxic endurance. We fell so in love with the reward, the big house, the reformed man, the emotional surrender, that we started seeking out the conflict just to get to the prize. We made the struggle a prerequisite for true love. We decided that a love that is easy, kind, and respectful from day one is boring, while a love that starts with a snub and 100 red flags is epic. Mr. Darcy isn't the problem. The Darcy myth is. It's the dangerous belief that being a jerk is just a symptom of being a soulmate. It's the lie that says your patience is a currency that can buy someone else's character. Next time you meet someone who treats you like you're tolerable at best, don't wait for the rain. Don't wait for the letter. Just leave. Because Pemberley isn't a place, it's a distraction. And you deserve a hero who doesn't need to be rebuilt from the ground up just to see your worth. What do you think? Are you a Darcy apologist, or are you ready to burn the myth down? Let me know in the comments. If you know someone who's still holding out for their own Christian Grey or Edward Cullen, please send them this video. Friends don't let friends romanticize red flags.